Hello everyone and welcome to Whiskey Wednesday. Unusually, this bottle you imagine we would have already reviewed in the past, but I've been looking through the archives and we've never even talked about it before. Springbank 10-year-old. As a side story, trying to find a bottle of this in 2020 has been not impossible, but luckily there's a few different retailers in Manchester who sell some stuff as well as whiskey. Managed to find it a couple of doors down. 2020 will be known as many things, but it will also be known as the year as the Springbank shortage. Managed to pick this up around the corner for about £42, great price. Most of you are going to know Springbank, you're going to know about its small capacity, its family owned style. They make 3 different whiskies under one roof, they save the Campbelltown region. But we're going to focus on the 10 today. The distillery itself only produces about 750,000 litres a year, so it's not a lot, it's very small. Springbank 10 is peated, as well as being 2.5 times distilled. Not too sure about the maths on that. I'm pretty sure they take some double distilled stuff and some triple distilled stuff and just kind of vat it together. I think that's the easiest way to go around it. And the peat, it is peated, but I think it's like from, it's like 6 hours, or is it 8 hours? I think it's 6 hours worth of peating. Whereas the other whiskey they make, Long Row, is nearly 2 days worth of peat influence, so nearly 48 hours. Whereas Hazelburn, which is the much lighter side of it, is triple distilled and not peated at all. So 3 very different whiskies under one roof, wonderful styles. I will say that the last time I tried a Springbank 10-year-old was at, it was a tasting session that I was doing in a bar, and they just pulled the bottle off the bar, and I remember thinking, I've not had this for ages, and it was really like fungal and medicinal and earthy and a bit weird, which is why so many people fall in love with it. But this particular batch is very different. The batch number on it, because there is a bottling number, this is from the 21st of January this year. So it is this year's batch. It may have only been this year's batch, I'm not too sure. I haven't owned a bottle of Springbank in a very long time, so all the numbers and facts are kind of slowly coming back to me. But the 10-year-old, much with most of their other stock, I imagine there's different styles for different batches. I'm going to assume this one is mostly bourbon cask with just a little bit of sherry, which sounds safe, and the smell would make me think that too. But let's dive into the smell, we'll go into the taste, and we'll kind of round everything up. Yep, same as when I bought it about a week ago. The first pop of the cork, honestly amazed by how tangerine-y it is. A very overused tasting note and smelling note in whiskey these days is like orange skin, orange pith, old-fashioned cocktails. But this, honestly, it's like those tiny tangerines, that really intense oil you get when you kind of rip the skin off to go and eat it. Just full of that. The smoke is very subdued. It sits in the background, kind of minding its own business. And it has that nice classic ashy Campbelltown, slightly metallic nature to it. Not a bad thing, but I would describe it as a more metallic type of smoke. And then in the middle, connecting the fruit and that nice kind of unusual smoky style, is that funk that we always talk about with Springbank. I talk about it with Brook Laddie as well, especially things like Octomore and the standard classic Laddie bottling. There's just this kind of grey area of flavour, which can sometimes be described as mushroomy and earthy. It can sometimes be described as kind of blue cheesy and a bit more kind of acidic in that nature. There's a very specific word that some people use for it. I think it's called rancino, where it has the element of like old things, old cheeses, old leather. Yeah, like a very much a melding area to get from the big fruity side of this style all the way through to that more subtle smoke in this 10-year-old. But indeed, the longer you leave it in the glass, the more it just smell like you're smoking around tangerines. It's got that beautiful big oily style, but the smoke just lingering everywhere. Taste-wise, the peat is a lot more present. Really makes itself be felt on the sides of the tongue. Even after swallowing it, it's still there now. There's kind of like a switch of roles, a role reversal, if you will. When you smell it, it's big and fruity, and the smoke is in the back. When you go to taste it, the smoke is very present, and the fruit goes to the back. There's not loads of flavour in it, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but like there's just two very dominant notes of big tangerine and smoke. There are some other things in there like apple, pear, quite typical cliche notes. But this particular batch is just singing with these big bright orange notes. I suppose it makes the packaging even more alluring now, that kind of nice orange flavour to it. Yeah, as stated prior, I think the cask makeup is majority bourbon, and there might be a little bit of sherry in there. Nothing too sweet, not a Pedro Jimenez or anything, but a bit of Oloroso, maybe something a bit drier, perhaps a Fino or a Manzanilla. The more you drink it, the drier the finish does become. But again, in a very classic Campbelltown, very Springbank way. You know, think about cigarette ash, think about cigar smoke, or the way it kind of lingers around your mouth like a chamber. And then there's these little kind of cubes of fruit kind of bouncing themselves all around your tongue. Simple, does what it says on the tin, and as soon as you try Springbank, you kind of fall in love with it a little bit. There's many things going on with it, but it always has two very dominant flavour profiles, whether it be apple and smoke or pear and smoke. This one is particularly tangerine. The 15 is more sherry orientated, the 21 and the 18 tend to change quite a bit in terms of what is within them. The 21 can sometimes be mostly port and mostly rum or mostly sherry. So the distillery is fun, it's got a good history with it. Long Grow, if you're a fan of the heavily peated stuff, use loads of strange wine maturation on their red series. Long Grow Gold is a delicious entry point product at about 30 quid. Hazelburn I'm not the biggest fan of. I think I've said it before on the channel, but me and triple distilled Scotch whiskey just doesn't really get on. But I've only tried one, so maybe I'm being a bit more prejudiced there than I should be. But yeah, quite a short review. Springbank 10, delicious product. I think it walks easy with a 9. I think in terms of the value that you get for this, about £40. It's short supply right now in this particular year. But in terms of the price, in terms of the flavour, in terms of what you get for it, I don't think much really competes with it unless you lean into kind of Ben Riach territory with the 10 Curiositas, which is kind of Springbanky. It's a rum cask finish and it's higher ABV. But nonetheless, that's Springbank 10. Nice short review for you there. A solid 9 out of 10. So thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you next week.